And I would like to thank our sponsors that have made this program possible today. And before we start, thank you to CSAA Insurance Group, Benefit Cosmetics, First Republic Bank, Adobe Black Employees Network, Black Hat PlayStation, Bloomberg Corporate, and Wilson Sonsini. Thank you so much. All right. So the first piece we're looking at is this one, but beforehand, I want to invite Dimitri to tell us a little bit about how he put together the music and art for this program.
Yeah.
Dimitri.
So I won't go too in depth because I want to talk about it throughout. But we really wanted to. I know folks are here for a talk connected to Juneteenth, and we see Juneteenth as an ongoing struggle, as an ongoing process. And so we're looking at art from really the civil rights era, particularly the Black arts movement, so the 1960s, 1970s, and some also contemporary art. And all of the music is contemporary, so made in the well, I guess some of it was in the 20th century, right? At the end of the 20th century. So I'll say the music is all from my lifetime. How about that? And I'm excited to hear what people think about it.
Yes. Yeah. Shall we start with this one?
Go for it.
All right. I would love to hear other people's thoughts in the chat. Let us know what you think as we're sharing these pieces and the music. Dimitri, tell us a little bit about the music and we'll go into the art.
Yeah, so that is, folks definitely know Public Enemy, Fight the Power. They redid the song with some guest contemporary artists in 2020. So that was actually Fight the Power 2020. You may have heard or recognized that it was slightly different than the 1980s version. But yeah, we started off with the line at the very beginning that history books never taught us about Juneteenth, and so I thought that was really appropriate to start the day off with. And today we'll explain the art and how it fits in.
Yeah. So this is a piece by Faith Ringgold, made in 1971-72. And just to give you an idea of the scale, I had an opportunity to see it in real life at a museum, and you can kind of see the scale of this print. And go back to also the piece, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And so this, amongst many of her prints, Faith Ringgold takes us back to September 13, 1971, which was the deadliest prison upheaval in American history. Came to a blood-spattered and just in east of Buffalo, New York, with more than 40 prisoners and employees dead at the notorious Attica Correctional Facility. And prisoner demands for human treatment was met with an institutional show of force. In response, Faith Ringgold created this piece and to call attention not only to that atrocity, but also to all injustices that have been caused or connected to the United States of America. And the map shows a country divided into quadrants and crisscross that recalls the view through the scope of a rifle. And as we can recall also, the colors red, green, and black represent blood, fertility, and the African diaspora, or specifically the Pan-Africanist colors. You can see the black writing, the red and the green in this piece as well. So I'll take you back to the full piece so we can take a look a little bit more. And this map, this piece of art was very important also in her call, and Faith Ringgold's call for us to contribute to it, to add to it. It's never done, and so she asks us to continue to document and to mark places in which violence and injustice have taken place. Any thoughts from Ronnie, Charlie, and Dimitri?
Well, I know we have a request to read some of the text. Does someone want to
be able to read it?
Yeah, I think we had a request from P. Fox.
Oh, okay. So if you look from the tip of Florida, for example, just off the tip of Florida, it says Civil War, 1861, 1865, 336,511 dead and wounded. And that's how she's marking it. And then if you look, for example, right now I have it up close. I don't know if it's clear and visible for folks.
I think it is a little, maybe a little hazy for folks.
It might be a little hazy for folks. The
smaller text is harder to read, but the block text is pretty readable.
Okay, great. So from lynching to wars that have happened in that was happening in Vietnam, which at the time it was like 60% of the United States citizens that were from a survey, about 60% of the United citizens thought that the war in Vietnam was wrong and should not have happened. So I just it's the documentation of the events that were happening in the world inflicted by the U.S. or crimes that were happening, violence that was happening in the United States as well.
Yeah, I think also just, I think really important to add to this is that this was completed in 1972. So from 1972 until the present, there's been so many more. And, it would be really interesting, I think, to see what this map looks like right now. I suspect, based on the latest data we've been seeing on gun-related violence in this country, that significant parts of this map would be just completely Black right now. And so it'd be even less legible than it is now.
I was wondering if you guys could comment on the use of red and green. I think that's a really interesting choice. And what do you think the significance is of it?
So red and green, so what I think the black, red and green, black ink that's been used for writing and the green and the red are the Pan-Africanist colors, the Pan-African flag, for example, is black, red, and green. I think that's her way of connecting it to that power, Black power, Black Pan-Africanist movement.
I think she also created this grid that, it's not a circle, but for me it really reminds me of crosshairs. And I don't know if that's just on my mind because all of the recent, debates that we've been having as a nation, but that act of it being this cross through the middle, that I think is really highlighted because of the way that she checkerboarded it. Almost.
And that's somewhere. And somewhere also I picked up that through a rifle to, a magnifier, or I don't know what you call it, through a rifle, the lines, the quadrants that you see, the scope,
And plus, they're complementary colors too, and so complementary colors are going to pop, right? They're going to make they're going to make it more visible. They're going to make it more vibrant. I mean, they literally do make your brain vibrate when you see complementary colors next to each other. So it's very powerful.
That's a good point, Charlie. I think that it's also, if we had seen it as one piece, as one map, I wonder if for me, it also makes it, it divides it for me so that I can focus on different areas at a different time. So it's makes it easier for me. But that's a really good point from the readability point of view. All right, ready for the next work?
Hang on just one second. There was a comment from P. Fox saying red and green also evokes Christmas, Christianity, and the things done in the name of faith. So I think that's an interesting comment regarding that piece as well.
Oh, that is a good comment. The artist did not say, so I can't really say, but it definitely a good view. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Way to get us energized. So yeah, there was a large collaboration song that Beyonce did with artists from all over the continent of Africa. I think it was primarily South Africa and Nigeria, but do not quote me. I don't want anyone upset with me if I missed out a country on there for the Lion King remake film. And this suit brings me so much joy. Is a revolutionary suit created by artist Jay Jarrell, who was one of the founding members of Afro Cobra. She created the first suit in 1969. And I want to point your eyes to the yellow bandolier there. And you may notice that instead of traditional bullets in there, Jay Jarrell has filled it with pastels. And it was for me, it was like the second that I recognized that, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this piece. It's the artist as revolutionary. And so she is creating a place within the movement, within civil rights movement, and for artists, and saying that artists can also create change and evoke change through their work. And today, will you pull up the amazing photo of her? So this just brings me so much joy and so much life to see her actually wearing the suit. She remade it in 2010 for, oh my gosh, what is the name of the exhibition? I don't know why. Soul of a Nation. I don't know why I always forget it. Yeah. Somehow I always forget the name of it. But she remade it in 2010 because the original suit had been lost. So you'll see a little bit of differences in the style. I think as an older woman, when she recreated it, she made it a little bit more conservative than it was in 69 for her. But yeah, I just want to read a quote from her. She was interviewed in 1971 by Jet magazine, and she says that the bandolier was not simply a fashion accessory. We may actually know it. This is not her quote. I'm sorry, I'm interjecting. We think about the bandolier, at least I do. It evokes the Zapatistas and that movement. So it's immediately, evoking revolution. She says, we were not saying something when we used the belts. We're involved in a real revolution. Or sorry, I said we were not. We were saying something when we used the belts. We're involved in a revolution. And so really from the beginning of her practice, she started off, she started her own fashion store in the South Side of Chicago. And then she slowly started to move into using fashion as a form of art and as a form of protest. And I just think that's really amazing. Also, I think I said it at the beginning that she was one of the founders of the AfriCobra, the African Commune of Bad Relevant Artists, with several of the artists that we'll look at today. And yes, so she started moving her fashion into sculptures. I don't know, what are other folks think about this one?
Well, I really, really like it, of course. And then you and Lucreza had mentioned, you said that you and Lucreza had a discussion about the material. And of course, I was just like, wait, wool, where is wool used in the US the most? And apparently it has always been the primary fiber in all US armed forces and dresses in uniforms. And the reason for that is because wool has a quality of heat resistance and flame retardancy. So I don't know the artist. I have not read that the artist says these things, but there's definitely something to be said about the material choice. And I'm convinced that she probably, J. Jarrell probably thought about that as well. That's what I think, because just to use the belt, what is the belt called again, Dimitri?
The bandolier.
The bandolier, and using the pastels as that, it takes
bullets.
It takes kind of sitting with materials and thinking about the fiber of what you're working on. So for me, it's just like, okay, you really did think about the fabric that you're using, particular fabric that you're using. And of course, when you fight, why don't you also look fabulous like that? So yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I'm not seeing the chat for some reason. My screen
there is
blocked,
another comment from Sherry Rosenberg, who says, "I loved Soul of a Nation. My son and I went twice. I bought the book of the show and a tote bag. We were among the last 2 patrons to leave the museum on Friday, March 13th, 2020, a little after 5:15 when the museum closed down because of the pandemic."
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And then Sarah Paul says the pastels are immediately available too.
Good point. Good point, Sarah. Yeah, right. Really so they're with you everywhere you go, ready to create the art.
That's true.
Yeah,
and with that sentiment also, I'm sorry. What?
I just want to say I like the photograph. She looks like she really is in a war zone.
Yeah.
In the south side of Chicago.
Yeah, she's like, I got my pastels. I have no concerns,
Yeah. With the same similar sentiment. Moving on to the next.
With a smile on her face, Sherry says.
That's right. Let's see.
We gon' keep marching.
Yeah, so this is Elizabeth Catlett. She's an artist that we've featured before on these presentations, and you might know her for her sculpture, but she also does these. This particular case, it's a lino cut, and it's a fabulous work. If you're not familiar with Elizabeth Catlett, she was really important not only as an artist but as a teacher, and we're going to see later on one of her students. But she also has a really interesting history. First of all, she had gotten into the Carnegie Institute of Art as a student until she showed up and they figured out that she was Black, and they were like, well, and they ended up reneging on the acceptance. When she ended up telling this story many years later in the audience with someone from Carnegie who was so appalled that they ended up giving her a doctorate. from the school, an honorary doctorate from the school, to try to make amends for that. But she was someone very early on who was very political. She ended up going to Mexico and studying with a lot of sort of revolutionary muralists, which is where she got a lot of her revolutionary consciousness in terms of her artwork. And in fact, she ended up being prevented from coming back into the United States because of some presumed communist sympathies as a result of her work with the artists. And again, this is going to come back to another artist that we have there. But I really want to look at this piece from an artistic point of view. You know, it's a lino cut. And, you know, I don't know. Thank you for doing that that close up, because if you look at what she's doing here, you know, there's, I don't know how many of you have tried to do either pen and ink or lino cuts or some kind of etching of some sort, but the way that you create shadow and texture is by cross-hatching. And if you really look at the way she's doing the cross-hatching on this, you really get the sense, if you look at the barrel of the gun, you really get the sense of yes, that part is shiny metal. Yes, that part is not. That's where you would put your hand, presumably out of wood or some other texture. You know, look at all the different textures she's getting in that woman's clothing in the back. You know, you can see where all the folds are. Look at the textures of this man's shirt. It's really brilliantly done as a work of art. And so I really like her work. You know, if you only knew her sculpture, then, you know, you're in for a surprise when you look at some of the other work that she does. And again, just keeping in mind her importance in terms of art education. Other thoughts about this piece?
Yeah, I think also, today, I don't know if you were gonna pop it up, just I don't know if you want to do that, some of the quotes from Elizabeth Catlett, or
You know what? I actually lost it. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No problem. But I think also just you know, during this time in the 50s, Elizabeth Catlett was really interested in re-injecting African American women into the record, into the visual arts record and the history record. And so this is one of 3 lino cuts that she did of Harriet Tubman. You can Google search them. We don't have the links to those right now, but you could definitely look up the other ones that she did. And some of them are, you know, she has her really severe looking. But yeah, she also just really wanted to portray, I think inspired by the Mexican arts movement that she was very much a part of, is really just showing the everyday woman, the lower class woman, and uplifting them through her art. So I think that's another really important component to her.
Right. There's a term that they use for her work, which is Afro-femme-centrist.
Ooh,
You know, that
Oh,
I didn't
I did not know that.
You know,
That is I like that.
Afro-centrist is a term that's sometimes applied to her art. And I think, you know, this is just a great example. Sorry, I forgot to mention it's of Harriet Tubman. So thank you for doing that to me. Kind of a little detail that might have been but yeah.
I think folks know that. And then, yeah, in terms of the music, you know, as soon as I saw this, it immediately evoked the Erykah Badu song Soldier, which is one of my favorite songs. So, you know, it's just one of those lines where, you know, Harriet Tubman had the famous line of, you know, carrying her shotgun, not just to protect the folks that she was shepherding, you know, to freedom in the North, but also to keep them moving, because if they went back, they jeopardized her entire mission and everyone else's safety, and the discovery of the Underground Railroad. So Harriet Tubman is just, oh my gosh, she's just so incredible in so many ways.
Wow. There's a comment from P. Fox. By the way, P. Fox, can you put in your first name so we can...
Right, stop saying that.
P. Fox. But she says, does anyone know names of any of the other Mexican artists with whom she worked? I didn't recognize a lot of the other names. One of the more famous ones is Siqueiros, you know, who was one of the major muralists from Mexico. There were others that she worked with, but I didn't know them off the top of my head. That one sort of stuck in my mind. Sherry Rosenberg says, because of the technique and probably purposeful, it's almost like there are halos around the people's heads. Yeah, I think that's a great comment. And again, this is just great technique. This is, you know, again, using that cross-hatching and how do you make those heads pop out. And, you know, it's really I think from an artistic point of view, it's a great work. It's a really masterfully done work.
And isn't it the same technique that's used for U.S. currency?
Oh,
it is. You're so right.
yeah.
We're kind of reusing that for, to give us a different view on history.
Yeah, that's how I counterfeit my bills. I don't know about you guys, but that's what I do.
And we're still waiting on that Harriet $20 bill we were promised. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Adrian wishes everyone a happy Juneteenth.
Oh, thank you. Well, and on this one, I want to go back to what Sherry said, because the lighting, I think we talked about the lighting a little bit of a couple of days ago, of how do you create a source of lighting, because the lighting is coming from our side, right? So it's kind of like a light is shone, like shining upon Harriet, and like it's the darkness that they are leaving behind. It seems like the storm or the darkness that's in the back. Yeah. I like
fun
that.
technique to play with. You yourself, if you're not used to doing that cross hatching, is if you really study like the masters like Durer and Rembrandt, and what they were doing and how they create shadow and texture and fold. It's really kind of fun. If while you're doodling, try doing that. Put in just straight lines and then X's and then more X's, and how you can get different types of shadow and light. It's really great.
Wow. Oh, the computer decided that it wants to stay on this piece a little while longer.
Computer decided.
Computer has a mind of its own.
My computer does have a mind of its own. Yeah. Oh, maybe Dimitri, you can hop in for me with the next piece, if you don't mind. Oh, there it is. Okay, my computer came back. All right. It's gonna be like this. It's gonna be like this.
I guess to start off with this piece is that it is now on view thanks to the lovely Lava Thomas, curating her exhibition, along with David Huffman and two other artists. I forgot their names, excuse me, but those are the two that I love and know that curated it at the Berkeley Art Museum right now, and so you can actually go and visit it there. And I think to talk about this piece, I will just read it in Betty Saar's own words. I'm not going to inject my own thoughts in this, so if you'll just give me a moment to read this. Of this piece, Betty says, "My work started to become politicized after the death of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968. But the liberation of Aunt Jemima, which I made in 1972, was the first piece that was politically explicit. There was a community center in Berkeley on the edge of Black Panther Party territory in Oakland called the Rainbow Sign. They issued an open invitation to Black artists to be in a show about Black heroes, so I decided to make a Black heroine. For many years, I had collected derogatory images, postcards, a cigar box label, an ad for Beans, Darky toothpaste. I found a little Aunt Jemima mammy figure, a caricature of a Black slave, like those later used to advertise pancakes," talking about Aunt Jemima. "She had a broom in one hand, and on the other side, I gave her a rifle. In front of her, I placed a little postcard of a mammy with a mulatto child, which is another way Black women were exploited during slavery. I used the derogatory image to empower the Black woman by making her a revolutionary, like she was rebelling against her past enslavement. When my work was included in the exhibition WAC, Art on the Feminist Revolution, at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles in 2007, the activist and academic Angela Davis gave a talk in which she said, "The Black women's movement started with my work, The Liberation of Aunt Jemima." That was a real thrill.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for reading that quote. I mean, should we add anything more to that? I think that was an amazing.
Well, isn't it an
Carrie.
example? It's an example of the artist is revolutionary. The artist,
Yeah.
she took the pastels out of her bandolier and created this.
Yes, I love it.
Yes.
And Charlie wanted us to point out the Black power fist in the center, because sometimes that's a little challenging to see. And I think also just pointing out that, we've got the cotton on the bottom is something that Betty Saar really liked to use. So that's pulling back in, the slave plantation.
Yeah. Although I haven't heard it directly referenced, I have a feeling if you're at MoAD right now, if you're in the salon, right behind you, David Huffman's work, Trauma Eve, the sculpture piece of Trauma Eve, it really kind of, Trauma Eve and what was the other hero's name? Dimitri. I forget. There are two heroes with a watermelon spaceship. So if you see that, there's a connection for me, both being kind of artists from the East Bay, and there's a connection for me of taking something that is kind of making caricature of a Black figure, and then and reappropriating it to use to say our own message, or empowering that image for that. So I kind of like that connection, as if you're in the salon, you might be able to make that connection as well. Right now, you can just look back, and then you'll see it in a case if you're at MoAD. Yeah.
It was Luxor, I think. Luxor something.
Luxor. Yes. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Also, somewhere I saw, the connection of the pose that we see here of the figure that's in the back that's holding a rifle and a handgun and a broom. We also see that kind of the pose of holding two things, and kind of recalls the Black Panther Party. Party's Huey Newton sitting in a rattan throne, and so this image kind of reminds us of kind of like the way that the position of the figure in the back. All right.
It's not a very big piece, but it's pretty incredibly powerful. It's shocking.
Right.
And I think it was in 1972, and it still is today.
Yeah. You're right, Rodney. And
run, go back where you come from. Run, go back where you come from. We don't want your kind. We think you's a dog boy. Well, I'm America's son. This is where I come from. This land is mine. Hey! This land is mine. Hey! This land is mine.
Dimitri, the song.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the I had to find the I had to find the Grammy performance version where Gary Clark Jr. was performing with the Roots. If you want to know why I had to do that, there's some explicit language in that song that not everybody is ready to hear. But Gary Clark Jr. has a really potent message in that that I think really applies to Juneteenth about African American folks, building this country, but then still having to fight for belonging and for equal citizenship. And I think that ties in really well with David Hammond's piece, The Door Admission Office, created also in 1969. That was a potent year for art making, huh? David Hammond's created this piece right after the passing of two significant civil rights bills. But also the integration. Lucreza, I wish she was here with us because she has these great talks about, these great thoughts about how this represents school integration that I hadn't really thought about. But this is following the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that we all know so well, but he's also thinking about the 68 passing of the Fair Housing Act, which was the Civil Rights Act of 68. And so, it's just not only admission into schools, but then admission into housing, admission into society as a whole is what he's really thinking about. And Charlie, I think was it you who pointed out, the height? Someone pointed out that.
Yeah, I think it was.
It might have been Lucreza.
It was Rodney?
Rodney who talked about how this is kind of almost like a child's size. If you think about the size of a normal door, right? This would be a child looking in, and the door being closed on them. Yeah, no, it wasn't my comment. It was
okay.
Yeah, Lucreza is with us. She's still with us with these comments, and I think it was her.
Got it. Yeah, that sounds like something she would do, for sure. And just what happened?
Oh no, I'm looking at the image, the text. Yeah, sorry.
Great. So we found out P. Fox's first name. It's Patry. I hope I'm saying that right. And she says that hands pushing towards entry, but also reminds me of minstrel hands.
Oh, I never even thought about that. Yeah, like jazz hands, right? He's really well known for these body prints that he usually used himself for, but I doubt that this was him. This does look like a child as we get closer to it, where he would rub his body with oil and then press it up against surfaces, and then he would add pigment to it and then spray fixative. So that's also, that was something that I learned. I think Lucreza sent me some information on it. And that just also blew my mind that that's how he would get this image directly onto these surfaces. So it's literally using the body as a stamp.
And I also like the idea, he talks about having, using repurposed materials, but to me, it really has this other sense of, this is not a brand new door. Mm-hmm. This is a door that's been around for a long, long time. So it evokes the idea that, closing admissions is something that has been historically important, historically significant. So I really like how that, as an artistic choice is it works in terms of making the piece deeper or more multifaceted.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Dimitri and Charlie. Moving on to this next piece. Well, let's take a look at it until my computer catches up.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
not hearing anything.
That's okay.
Exactly, because Rodney, my computer is not.
Yeah, I'll sing it for you. I cannot sing her at all.
You're gonna sing. You're gonna sing for us.
I cannot sing her.
There used to be Art as We See It, where the docents just sing, and I can't sing, so that might.
Yeah, neither can I. I think all the participants would run.
Yeah, that was
next month to do the one where we all sing.
Yeah, see how many people show up.
Okay, so this is Carrie James Marshall. I think a lot of us are familiar with his work. He had right before the pandemic. He had a huge exhibit in New York, and has become so important in the sort of current art scene. And this is one of his works where it's, he's playing with us. He's playing with us on a lot of different levels. When we look at this, we have this wow and fun written on the work. And then, you see these Black figures in this boat going into what seems like a fun house, but in fact, there are these ghostly figures. There's a figure that's drowning right under that ghost on the right, if you can see that. And just this idea, he often uses this imagery of the Red Cross. We had a piece at MoAD a couple of years ago that had a work of his that had along the side, it had the reference to the Pan-African flag, but it also had the Swiss flag or the Red Cross flag. This idea of you're moving away from sanctuary, and this is supposed to represent the Middle Passage, the movement of slaves from Africa back to the United States. And so it's basically all about false advertising, wow, it's fun, America's great, come join us. And then they don't realize that they're heading towards this real horror. And, Carrie James Marshall uses really interesting coloration for his Black bodies. Other artists have mentioned how he uses almost an ultra Black, blacker than Black. And he himself has talked about how as a Black man, you have this contradiction of being really visible and yet invisible at the same time. And when you look at some of his other works, in this particular work, you don't really see the face so much, but in some of his other works, you see this very, very white eyes, very, very white teeth, with the idea being if they close their eyes and their mouth, they would completely disappear. And I think that, he uses that same idea here. So it's a really interesting and disturbing piece. Patry says, nice tongue-in-cheek riff on the ocean liner posters of the first third of the 20th century. I like that. That's a great comment. And then Adrian says, all this art is amazingly awesome. Thank you, Adrian, for that. Yeah, other comments about this piece?
Yeah, for me,
I hope everyone can appreciate that on the whole left third, there's this very, very diaphanous ghost-like presence. And for me, when you look at the waves under the boat, it really reminds me of these like Hokusai Japanese block prints, and then you have almost a hint of Mount Fuji in the background. You sort of wonder if Carrie James Marshall is also thinking about that reference as well. It's just a really complicated piece. There's a lot going on, and I think he's working on a lot of different levels.
Dimitri, I think you were going to add something.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, he made this piece in 94, but then, not long after that, for me, it also makes me think of Haitian refugees who, we know in the late 90s, early 2000s would take these little tiny rafts, to flee to the United States and were turned away and often drowned.
Cubans too.
So, yeah, but Haitians way more often than Cubans. Because there definitely is an entry of who is allowed into the United States and who's not.
Charlie and Dimitri, what do you make of the only face that is gazing on us? And are they directly looking at us, or where are they looking? I can't make out where they might be looking. This person right over here. Do you see my pointer?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think he is looking at us, right? And that look on his face, the expression. I don't know if folks can see it. We don't have a zoom in, huh?
No, I don't have a zoom in enough. Okay. I tried, but it was a little grainy.
It wouldn't do it.
it was a little grainy. Yeah.
It's not a happy face, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in the general mood of this is really ominous. It's really, it's got hints of like you said, the Hokusai prints, which are very kind of joyous, but this is a little, there's too much going on to disturb us, I think.
Yeah, and of course he was really influenced by Charles White, and we've shown some of Charles White's work in the past as well. Also very often political. He actually, another person that we talked about that he was influenced by was Bill Traylor, who, so he has like both of those sort of roots in the back of his artistic memory. And you can see some evidence of that in his work. Really interesting stuff. There's also a comment here from Adrian. It seems as though they're looking back.
Yeah, I think, you know what? I feel like there's a person looking in every direction.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I like this piece. And Dimitri likes to point out also how large this piece is.
Yes.
103 by
Gigantic.
114.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah.
8.5 by 9.5 feet, I think it is, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a big piece. And there's Patry says the childlike simplicity of the ghosts in contrast to the richness of the other elements in the piece. And then Adrian says maybe they saw danger.
For sure.
Yeah. I think we can spend so much time with this one. But let's move on because we have to. There we go.
We kicking out.
Yeah, so this is Barbara Jones Hogu, and what I'm doing is I'm putting in 2 links to some Russian constructivist work, which I think when you look at this piece, it really, when I first saw this piece, it reminded me a lot of the works. And, we talked about Elizabeth Catlett and her importance in art education. And this is a perfect example. Is that Barbara Jones Hogu actually met Elizabeth Catlett in Mexico while she was down there and was really, really influenced by her work and the political work that she was doing. And so, this piece is sort of an extension that, Dimitri had mentioned Afro-Cobra movement. She's another member of that movement that we were just talking about. But if you click on those links, you'll see what I'm talking about. The constructivists love using these triangles and these very sort of geometric shapes. And if you see the one where the woman, we can't show these images, unfortunately, which is why I'm showing you the links. But when you look at those, you can really see how she's thinking about those pieces. And Dimitri, you want to mention some about the about the technique itself that she's using in the different colors.
Yeah, I mean, just for me is the fact that this is a screen print, and I mean, I'm a beginning screen printer, but if you count, what did we count? I think 5 or 6 different colors, not including the tan of the color of the paper. I'm sorry. But there's brown, black, red, purple, blue, and am I missing anything? And then there's transparencies. So it's just an incredible piece. If anybody's ever tried screen printing the way that you have to register or line up your different screens to get, each color is a different screen. So she had to have 5 different screens, and then she had to perfectly line them up. And then with this woman who's looking directly at us on the right-hand side of the image with the raised fist right over her face, how she's got the transparency. I mean, just even from a technical standpoint, this piece is incredible. It's just outrageous. Yeah, even on the left side, the way that she's incorporated the transparencies, which is, you put this transparent medium so that your color doesn't, get too opaque and cover up and up apart. So I'm sorry, I'm nerding out completely just about art techniques on this because it blows my mind.
We want you to.
It blows my mind.
Our favorite things.
Yeah, so I mean, this piece just not only is it beautiful, is it the composition is incredible. You get the feeling, like I think today is like, I feel like I'm there. I can hear the sounds. She's just using this brilliant artistic technique that I can't figure out. Like, I don't know how someone does this.
Yeah, and again, have to mention that she was trained at the Art Institute of Chicago, which we've talked about this before. We just mentioned how Elizabeth Catlett was, as an artist, was accepted into Carnegie, but until they saw she was Black, and then that acceptance was retracted. Art Institute of Chicago is one of those schools right from the very beginning that had lots and lots of Black artists who were integral to the program there. And, we could just list the names of these great artists who have trained there. So it really deserves mention. They were a unique, and they continue to be a great art program, but it just needs to be mentioned.
Well, I'm glad to hear
Charlie,
that.
are you a board member of there?
Well, my nephew is going to be entering in their freshman class in September.
Woohoo! Congratulations.
Good school, congratulations. And I want to say with this piece also is that, the fist and the ankh, if you see the earring over here, is that connective power to it, and symbolization of like unity itself, and having, this sign of defiance. And we talk about natural hair, but we talk about Afro, how that was kind of a political statement, and a statement of self-determination and power. And so in all of those, and I love how she packs all of those, and at the same time also invites us to look beyond what is just in front of us, because to me, I feel like there's a path leading me somewhere. There's the vantage point that creates depth, and I also feel like they're cheering me on as I'm walking in the middle of them. That's how I feel like, kind of like they're welcoming me into this, the struggle and the fight and the support and the unity. And just kind of, that's how I feel with the vantage point that she has created with these angles, the triangulars that Charlie was talking about a little earlier. I really like this piece.
I love that comment today, because it's like the opposite of walking the gauntlet, which we usually think of as a negative thing. You walk the gauntlet and people are beating you. Yeah. I really like that for you, it's this positive gauntlet, right? If you will. People are drawing you into this crowd. That's a great comment. I like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Charlie. All right. How are we on time? Hold on. Oh,
we've got 5 minutes, so
don't worry about it. Don't look at the time. Don't worry.
You're so great.
I think, since I forgot to put the artist, the musician's name, I want people to guess who it is.
Oh my goodness.
On purpose.
I'm sure that a lot of these folks know this amazing artist.
Is this Madonna? Is that who this is?
Oh my goodness, Charlie.
Charlie?
It's a Mel Leroux, who was part of the mid '90s band with her. I think it was her boyfriend or husband at the time, Groove Theory. But Mel Leroux is pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah. I just want to point out also, if you joined us on Zoom today, I will send you all the art that we've seen, the links to the artwork, and the music videos on YouTube, so you can check out all these artists, music artists as well. Yeah, go ahead, Dimitri. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no. Thanks for saying that. This is Carolyn Lawrence, Black Children Keep Your Spirits Free, 1972, and we, definitely wanted to leave you with something positive. This piece is just so joyful. And, I think Carolyn Lawrence was an artist who was really not only also part of Afrocobra, and, you can see a similar style in a different way, though, of having the text where she's just, repeating all over, the piece, Black Children Keep Your Spirits Free. But, she wants students and artists. She also was a teacher, so I should point that out. And so, she thought that if African American children connected to their ancestry and to their history and knew where they came from, then they would know where they were going. It's like the Sankofa. If you want to move forward, you've got to look back and go collect your own history and your ancient knowledge. And so that's really what this piece is about. And, you may have seen or not noticed it. It took me a while, but in the background of the image, there's a little girl who looks like she's maybe playing, jacks or something. I don't know what she's playing on the ground, or hopscotch or something. And behind her is the map of the United States. And then right here, the green is the map of Africa. And so she's connecting them also through the piece. And I don't know what else to say about it, except for this piece is just joyful.
Yeah, it is such a good piece. And I'm glad we're ending the part 1 on this piece. And part 2 will be on July 12th. And we'll share the link in the follow-up email that we'll send you. We'll also post it on our website soon. And with that, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us on Zoom, on Facebook, and also at the Salon Museum of the African Diaspora. And I would like to thank our sponsors. And here is the list of sponsors that made this event possible.